Well, I failed. Let's talk about it. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. So, in my last sketchbook tour, I mentioned this sketchbook briefly. Now, this sketchbook is special because I actually consider this sketchbook one of my artistic failures. And I say that and I ask you to take it with a grain of salt. I think this is one of my artistic failures because of how long and the gaps between how long it took me to fill the pages. I feel like was I let myself down creatively, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm a weird person and I can be my harshest critic, but I wanted to really talk about why we as artists don't talk a lot about our failed projects or our failed attempts, or why there is this notion that if you are an artist or if you consider yourself an artist, that everything that you create has to be absolute perfection and has to be quote unquote a work of art. And it's come to me lately realizing that being an artist is more than my finished works. I hope that makes sense. I'll try to explain it as I go through, but let's go ahead and take a look at the infamous, what I am calling my 3-year sketchbook. So, I call this my 3-year sketchbook because it took me literally 3 years to fill. And as you can see, there's not really a lot of pages. It's the Illo sketchbook. It's super compact. You could take it anywhere. I personally was not a huge fan of the sketchbook. You can obviously see that it has been through it has seen days, it has seen lots of days. So it definitely has something to say. I just don't really know what the sketchbook is trying to say. And that's another thing, or another reason why I consider this a failure. Oops, my bad. Failure in my art journey. Now, I started this I'm way off. Now, I started this sketchbook back on May 2nd, 2022. As you can see, this is my 17th sketchbook. A lot of my earlier years in my art, I don't know if anybody else did this, I sketched a lot or drew a lot on loose paper, and over the years and through so many moves, those works have just kind of disappeared. Slowly but surely. I try my best to keep them all together, but let's face it, the ADHD is strong when moving. But I got this Illo sketchbook because it came highly recommended by Drawn with Waffles, so I thought I would give it a shot. And honestly, just even from my cover page, I really did like the sketchbook at first. There are some areas, as you can see here, where I'm not sure what I did or anything, but the paper does take marker ink really weird, and I'll get more into that as I go through the sketchbook. This right here is just a piece of cardstock, so you can see this was my test page. I love keeping my test pages. I don't know why. There's something aesthetically pleasing about them, and they're not on purpose. I just literally grab, obviously, whatever scrap paper and start using it as a test sheet. So, but it definitely helps me put everything else kind of into perspective, almost like a mood board, right? As you can see here, just kind of testing out the paper. I've always kind of did my sketching in pen, especially since I was a doodler in school. I doodled on all my notes, so whatever was in my hand, 9 times out of 10 it was a pen. So yeah, I sketch a lot in pen. I feel like it helps me not erase and just kind of keep moving and keep redrawing and practicing. This was me finalizing my mermaid design for 2022. And as you can see, it's from my my first version 1 of my Sona. We can tell by the jacket and the long hair. And I was doing thumbnails to kind of do the cover. And we were in full swing in Mermaid. Yeah, see, another little test swatchy here that I absolutely love. Did some fan art of my friend Bear. And of course, as we were getting done with um, Mermaid, we were heading into Pride. So this was my Pride piece for 2022. You can see I finished it in June, but this is kind of where I started to really understand the paper in this sketchbook. It holds ink beautifully. The problem is that it doesn't hold a lot of ink. There are certain papers that absorb the ink a little bit more or absorb it in a way where the shading or the blending is a little bit more tolerable. You can see here in certain places where the ink didn't really take too much and it created this weird texture. So if you are a infamous blender, like I tend to be, I go over spots multiple times. Don't ask me why. It's it's my process. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you're going forward with an Illo. But again, keep in mind it's been 3 years, so for all I know, the Illos of today are completely different from the Illos of yesteryear. But yeah, did a lot more thumbnailing, trying to kind of figure out the layout of this paper. This was also one of my very first like square sketchbooks. Um, Lots of doodles in this sketchbook. Because like I said, I found as we go through, you'll see kind of like my love and hate relationship with the sketchbook or the struggle I was having in finishing it. So lots of doodles, lots of planning, thumbnailing, trying to plan out different illustrations and drawings that I've done over the years, but I wasn't really finding a lot of inspiration. I was drawing a lot of old OCs, drawing a lot of myself, a lot of my Sona, um, and I think that was just because when in doubt, I go to my comfort things. So as we can see here, I was redesigning my whole outfit for my Sona version 2.0, and I was practicing skirts and skull variations and patterns and things like that. So when I find myself lacking inspiration, I kind of tend to go to myself or the things in my life or just really familiar characters. I was definitely trying out drawing my puppies here. This is my boy Loki because he's my good boy and he is the protector of the group. And then this is my girl Abby, and this is my baby. She is my sassy little Spitfire. Both 10-pound dogs, and you would think that they were pit bulls, but that's the Chihuahua in them. But yeah, like I said, I go to familiarity, and I think a lot of us do. Like, again, a lot of myself, a lot of people in my life. We can see here, I was drawing Mizzy, the infamous Mizzy Blooms. I've mentioned her like in almost every video. That's just because she's such a good friend, and honestly, one of my most closest art friends. And if you have an art friend in your life, you know what I'm talking about, that camaraderie or the sharing of ideas or the creative flow that happens when you have an art friend that I really didn't have growing up. Duh, you kind of get it online. So, she comes around. Love you, Mizzy. And again, more warm-ups, just kind of flirting around with different ideas. We can see here, this is my magical girl OC, Andrea, that I've drawn in every single sketchbook, but she's also a character that I go back to when I find myself lacking inspiration. Again, warm-ups, sketching, trying to incorporate different body types, different designs, different ideas. And again, and this is kind of where I was noticing that I was lacking inspiration. Going through these last few pages, just noticing the doodles and what I was doodling, and it like dawned on me that nothing new was coming out. And I think that's what I mean by like why I consider this sketchbook like a failure in my creative journey, because there's really not a lot of new things in this sketchbook. Now, also, this is our first time gap because everything here has been in 2022. I'm not sure where a lot of 2023 went in these pages because again, this was all 2022. And then we jump here to where I draw my little sugar cube for the very first time. And this was close to around the time we brought him home from the hospital. I don't know if anyone's new here, but yep, I have a beautiful baby boy who I call Sugar Cube, and he was actually a preemie. He was born at 29 weeks, and he spent 2 months in the NICU. So when I first had my baby boy, um, he was in the hospital, and I would take my sketchbook and I would sketch little visions of us. And just one day, he had his first little onesie on um, in the NICU because he was in an incubator for a little bit. And I walked up and he had a little onesie on in the incubator for the first time. It was so cute. And the way he reached up at me just melted my heart. I had to draw it. So I drew it. That is my baby boy. He is currently a raging toddler now, but I he's still my baby. Again, more of my Sona, more of myself. Again, kind of like I said, lacking that creative inspiration or lacking or just not having any new ideas. Again, my girl Andrea, some other little magical girl designs that I have done. I tried drawing my OC Marisol in some different color schemes. I wasn't really digging this too much. I feel like it came off as a very completely different character. And here goes our next time lapse because after this, we're kind of headed into 2025. So I was probably halfway through the sketchbook and it had not been done. And then in 2025, I picked it back up again and said, oh, well, let's keep doing this. So I was trying out some new things, new ideas, new art supplies, and I don't know. This is not my favorite. Like I said, this illustration in particular is not my favorite. I feel like I'm getting close in terms of kind of like the coloring style I want to do. Um, but I don't know. There's something lacking here, and I didn't really know what it was at the time. And of course, because I was forcing myself to do certain things, I took it upon myself to kind of try and do new techniques, new um, subjects, and more of my comfort characters. Tried taking inspiration from what I was really into at the time. If you didn't understand, this is around the time that Poppy Playtime Chapter 4 came out, and I was like, ooh, that color palette is really great. I wonder if I can color match my markers. And so I did that and had a good time with it. And again, more of Andrea, and I was trying to do more male characters because, again, that is something that I feel like I lack in. So, kind of running through here and um, making myself practice some fundamentals before I decided, you know what, I want to play with colors again and grabbed different uh, color palettes off of Pinterest and was trying to replicate that in my sketchbook. I was a fan of this color palette in particular. It reminded me of sherbet, it reminded me of beach, and and then for magical girls, we've seen this girl before in my previous sketchbooks. She's kind of like a holiday inspired OC that I had. Clearly, this is her Easter form. She has other forms. Her Easter form is just one of my favorites. So I had a good time drawing her in this sketchbook. Again, trying new things, trying new mediums. These were watercolor pens that were gifted to me, and I decided I really liked the color, the brown colors. They reminded me of bread, so I went ahead and bread, more thumbnails, and just again taking inspiration from where I could. If I sketched and doodled on notepads, I tried to paste it in my sketchbook to give myself some inspiration. And I to give myself some inspiration, and just honestly, I love these two. I want to draw more of these two in my upcoming sketchbook, especially since I'm revamping the original character. And more of that to come, because this is actually uh ties into like my TikTok channel and what went through and helped me kind of get more views on my TikTok channel for the first time. This was great because I get to talk about Mizzy again. Woo! We went to go see the Sailor Moon musical, and it was a lot of fun. We had such a good time. It was the first time we met up in person, and it was a wonderful show. For anybody who got to see it while it was here, fantastic. That led us kind of into Easter, and I did this up again really quickly. You can tell the difference in the coloring style when I don't use so much ink. It looks a lot more, oh god, crisp, cartoony. And then when I was doing the more blending and trying to get those different tones and things like that, that's when I started getting that weird texture. As you can see, you don't see any of that here. So it took me a long time to realize, okay, less is more with this particular sketchbook. And then here is my character Marisol. I actually really like this page a lot, and I think it's the colors. Like I said, I've been missing the beach, so I was really inspired to kind of draw like a beachy sunset scene. And of course, I love drawing floofy hair, so this was a lot of fun. This was May 2025, because I had set a goal. The challenge for me was to finish the sketchbook in May of 2025, and that is why I consider this another failure on another front. I failed that. Unfortunately, here's my baby, he's walking. So I just kind of redid the cover art, but in the new style of my new Sona with the new jacket type. I could have did a little better, so I was really inspired to kind of do the next page. I was more in love with this posing, this face pose, yeah, so I was liking this better more than I did this one. But, you know, to draw is to draw again. Then decided to do some style variations of my husband. This was my favorite. Love that man. And again, trying to practice more fundamentals by kind of using a new technique. And this technique, I see a lot of people use it digitally, where you draw in the silhouette, or you color in the silhouette first and then add in the detail after. And I was finding it was definitely helping me with my posing, definitely helping me with different body types and going from various body types. Especially when it comes to bigger body types, because we need some more body positivity, not only for our lovely ladies, but for our lovely guys as well, our fluffy guys. Heading toward the end of Mermaid, still trying to inspire myself by limiting my color palette. And yeah, this is what came out. I actually really like this one a lot. I liked this design a lot. It was just so simple, and yet so the colors just worked, I feel like. And as you can see, here is where I got frustrated, because I clearly failed my own personal art challenge, and I didn't finish in May. And you know what? It took me a couple days because I was beating myself up about it, but that's all right. It's okay when you don't finish something, or something is not aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Clearly, this sketchbook is in no way aesthetically pleasing, especially when you see a lot of scribble scrabbles and everything. But you know what? I take this as a lot of practice went into this sketchbook. Even though it wasn't the most creative and I didn't really add anything new to like my OC lore or anything like that, or just add anything new in terms of ideas, looks, or anything from other sketchbook work or other illustrations, it was still something creative and practicing. And again, I was kind of going into tunnel vision with this one, because everything fundamentally is fine, but and I limited my color palette like I liked. However, I was drawing this at a really weird angle, and you can definitely tell because this face needs to be adjusted ever so slightly. So we appreciate the color work, but we definitely aren't looking at um, face posing or anything. Again, more of myself and my husband. And you can definitely see this is just kind of where I was starting to like really just wanting to finish. And that was the thing, was if I didn't win my challenge, the one thing I was dang sure gonna do was finish it. So I decided to practice more with free sketching and free coloring. Really liked this pose. Again, drawing when and where I could, trying to kind of do comparisons and fundamentals and everything, but at this point I had to accept the fact that I failed, and if I kept forcing myself to draw something that I really wasn't wanting to do and just drawing just to finish, then I wasn't going to look back on this sketchbook as fondly as I've looked back on others. So, with that being said, the 3-year sketchbook is officially done. So let's go ahead and date it. From May 2022 to July 5th, 2025. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.